From historic achievements to legendary curses, here's 10 things you didn't know about the New York Rangers. Number 10. The Rangers were the first U.S. NHL team to win the Stanley Cup. The New York Rangers hold a special place in hockey history, not just as one of the NHL's original 6 teams, but as the first American NHL team to win the Stanley Cup. Their historic victory came in 1928, just 2 years after the team was founded, marking a defining moment for hockey in the United States. With the Rangers' triumph, New York City became the reigning champion in all 3 major sports leagues, joining the 1927 Yankees and the 1927 Giants. Before the Rangers' triumph, the Stanley Cup had been dominated by Canadian teams. But in just their second season of existence, the Rangers found themselves competing for hockey's ultimate prize against the Montreal Maroons. Against all odds, the Rangers defeated the Maroons in 5 games, securing the Stanley Cup and forever changing the landscape of American hockey. This win established the Rangers as a powerhouse, as they went on to win additional cups in 1933 and 1940. One thing I do want to note, while the Seattle Metropolitans were technically the first U.S. team to ever win the Stanley Cup back in 1917, they were a part of the Pacific Coast Hockey Association, not the NHL. Number 9. The Rangers weren't the original New York team. Many hockey fans associate the New York Rangers with the city's deep NHL roots, but they weren't actually the first team from New York to join the league. That distinction belongs to the New York Americans, a team that predated the Rangers and played a crucial role in hockey's early expansion into the United States. The New York Americans were founded in 1925, making them the first NHL franchise based in New York. The Americans proved to be a greater success than expected, ironically leading to the creation of the New York Rangers. Despite promising the Americans that they would be the only hockey team to play at Madison Square Garden, then MSG owner, Tex Rickard, decided to launch his own team. Rickard originally planned to name the team the New York Giants, a nod to New York's towering skyscrapers. But before this name took, sports writers in New York began dubbing the club Texas Rangers, referencing the famous police force in Texas. Rickard loved it, formally adopting it and printing the words Rangers in diagonal letters across the front of their jerseys. With strong ownership, financial stability, and instant success, including a Stanley Cup championship in just their second season, the Rangers quickly overshadowed the Americans. By the 1940s, the Americans were in serious trouble. World War II led to player shortages, and financial problems made things even worse. The team played its final season in 1942 before suspending operations, and despite plans to return after the war, they never made it back. The Rangers, meanwhile, remain the dominant New York franchise and have carried the city's NHL legacy ever since. Number 8. The Rangers are the only NHL team without a mascot. The New York Rangers hold a unique distinction in the NHL. They are the only team in the league without a mascot. While nearly every other franchise has embraced the trend of having a fun, furry, or sometimes bizarre character to entertain fans, the Rangers have stuck to tradition and remained mascot-free. This decision aligns with the team's classic no-frills identity. Established in 1926, the Rangers are one of the league's original 6 franchises, and they've long emphasized a traditional hockey culture rooted in history and legacy, rather than gimmicks. Madison Square Garden, their home arena, already boasts one of the most passionate fan bases in the sport, and the team has never felt the need for a costumed character to pump up the crowd. Over the years, there have been discussions among fans about what a Rangers mascot could look like, with some suggesting the Statue of Liberty as a great option. Still, the Rangers have continued to hold off on a mascot, and given their long-standing identity, they may never do so. For now, they remain an outlier in the NHL, proving that a team doesn't need a mascot to have a devoted following. Number 7. Brian Leetch was the first American to win the Conn Smythe. The 1993-1994 Stanley Cup Finals was one for the history books, especially for Rangers star defenseman Brian Leetch. Not only did the Rangers end their infamous 54-year Stanley Cup drought, but Leetch made history by becoming the first American-born player to win the Conn Smythe Trophy as playoff MVP. Leetch was nothing short of spectacular throughout the 1994 playoffs. Across 23 games, he racked up 34 points and had a +19 rating, an incredible feat for a defenseman. He dominated at both ends of the ice, shutting down top opponents while leading the Rangers' offensive charge. In the Stanley Cup Final against the Vancouver Canucks, Leetch was the backbone of the Rangers' success. He scored the opening goal in Game 7, setting the tone for a historic 3-2 victory that secured New York's first championship since 1940. Leach's 34 playoff points led all skaters and ranks as the second highest total by a defenseman in NHL playoff history, trailing only Paul Coffey's record-setting run in 1985. His Conn Smythe win was groundbreaking, as no American-born player had ever claimed the award before. Since then, only a few US-born players, including Jonathan Quick and Patrick Kane, have followed in his footsteps. Leach's legacy as a Rangers legend, an elite defenseman, and a trailblazer for American-born players remains unmatched. His performance in the 1994 Stanley Cup playoffs is still remembered as one of the greatest individual runs in NHL history. Number 6. The only captain-for-captain trade in NHL history. On March 5th, 2014, the New York Rangers and Tampa Bay Lightning shocked the hockey world by completing the only captain-for-captain trade in NHL history. The Rangers sent captain Ryan Callahan to Tampa in exchange for captain Marty St. Louis, a move that vastly reshaped both teams. Callahan, a hard-nosed leader, was in a contract dispute with the Rangers, and with free agency looming, New York opted to move him rather than risk losing him for nothing. Meanwhile, St. Louis, despite being a franchise icon in Tampa, had grown frustrated after initially being left off Team Canada's 2014 Olympic roster by Lightning GM Steve Yzerman. Though later added, the snub led to lingering tension, prompting St. Louis to request a trade, demanding the Rangers be his ultimate destination. St. Louis would prove to provide much-needed offense and leadership, playing a key role in the Rangers' 2014 Stanley Cup run, including emotional playoff performances after his mother's passing. Callahan's leadership and gritty play style helped shape Tampa's identity, contributing to their rise as a contender and setting the foundation for their 2020 and 2021 Stanley Cup championships. This historic trade remains one of the most memorable in NHL history, not just for its rarity, but for the lasting impact it had on both franchises. Number 5. The Rangers' infamous Curse of 1940. For over 50 years, the New York Rangers endured one of hockey's longest championship droughts, often blamed on the Curse of 1940. The curse stemmed from two key events following the Rangers' Stanley Cup victory in 1940. First, after winning the Stanley Cup in 1940, Rangers ownership paid off the mortgage on Madison Square Garden, and to celebrate, allegedly burned the mortgage papers inside the Stanley Cup. Many saw this as disrespecting the trophy, sparking beliefs that the team had been cursed. At the same time, Red Dutton, former coach and GM of the defunct New York Americans, reportedly placed a curse on the Rangers. Furious that his team had folded while the Rangers thrived, Dutton allegedly vowed that the Rangers would never win another Stanley Cup in his lifetime. True to his words, the team did not win again until 1994, 7 years after Dutton's passing. The Rangers suffered decades of playoff heartbreak, including Stanley Cup final losses in 1950, 1972, and 1979, fueling belief in the curse. After 54 years of frustration, the Rangers finally ended the curse, hoisting the Stanley Cup in 1994 after a dramatic Game 7 victory over the Vancouver Canucks. As the final seconds ticked down, broadcaster Sam Rosen famously declared,
"The waiting is over! The New York Rangers are the Stanley Cup champions!"
After 54 years, the Dutton curse was finally broken. Number 4. Goalie Ken McCauley set the NHL record for worst goals against average. The 1943-44 Rangers were hit the hardest by World War II, with many of their best players serving overseas. The Rangers asked the NHL to bow out of the league until the end of the war, but the NHL refused. In the fall of 1943, the Rangers signed goaltender Ken McCauley due to a shortage of players. At 22, while working as a probation officer, he was given the starting job just an hour before the season opener. The Rangers started the season on a 15-game winless streak, and that was just the beginning. On January 23, 1944, McCauley was on the losing side of the worst defeat in NHL history. McCauley allowed 15 goals on 58 shots, losing to the Detroit Red Wings 15-0. The Rangers finished dead last in the NHL that season, out of only 6 teams, with an abysmal record of 6-39-5, the 7th worst NHL season record of all time. McCauley played all 50 games, with the only relief coming after he was struck by a shot against the Detroit Red Wings, being taken to the hospital for a suspected broken jaw. Detroit's spare goalie, 17-year-old Harry Lumley, would take his place on an emergency basis for the third period, turning aside all shots faced. As it turned out, McCauley's jaw was only lacerated, and he would start the Rangers' next game. During the 1943-44 season, Macaulay gave up 310 goals in 50 games, setting the NHL record for the worst goals against average in league history. He'd go on to play one more season with New York, going 11, 25, and 10, with a 4.93 goals against average. That would be the last time he'd ever wear an NHL sweater. Number 3, the Rangers legend who changed the game. As part of the Rangers' famous breadline with his brother Bill Cook and center Frank Boucher, Bun Cook helped lead the team to Stanley Cup victories in 1928 and 1933. Bun Cook wasn't just a New York Rangers legend, though. He was a true hockey innovator, helping shape the way the game is played today. He is widely credited with inventing the drop pass, a strategic move that allowed teams to create space by leaving the puck behind for a trailing teammate, creating better positioning and deceptive plays. Before Cook, hockey was a straight-line game, but his creativity helped evolve offensive play. Today, the drop pass is a fundamental part of hockey, used in everything from breakouts to power plays and zone entries. Bun was also one of the earliest pioneers of the slap shot. While the slap shot is often associated with players like Bernie Boom Boom Geoffrion, Bun Cook was one of the earliest known adopters. Cook experimented with taking big, powerful swings at the puck, generating more speed and power than traditional shooting techniques. Though the slapshot became more popular decades later, Cook's early use helped lay the foundation for one of hockey's most lethal offensive weapons. His impact on the game, both as a player and innovator, cements his legacy as one of hockey's true pioneers. Number 2. The Circus displaced the Rangers during the 1950 Stanley Cup Finals. The 1950 Stanley Cup Finals featured an unusual and unprecedented situation for the New York Rangers. At the time, Madison Square Garden had a long-standing contract with the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus, taking priority over all else due to just how much money it brought in. To convert the Garden from the circus to hockey, 8 inches of dirt had to be removed from the floor, making it impossible to allow the circus and a hockey game to take place on the same day. Because of this, the Rangers were forced to use Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto as their quote home ice in the finals, a move that potentially cost the Rangers the Stanley Cup. After the Blue Shirts took a 3-2 series lead over the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL cited an obscure rule, stating the deciding game in a Stanley Cup Finals could not be played on neutral ice. Thus, the Detroit Olympia became the venue for Games 6 and 7, both which were won by Detroit. Despite their resilience, the Rangers ultimately fell to the Red Wings in a hard-fought 7-game series, with Detroit clinching the cup with a double overtime win in Game 7. The 1950 Finals remain a unique chapter in NHL history, illustrating how scheduling conflicts and outside events could impact a team's championship hopes. While today's NHL would never allow such an arrangement, the Rangers' experience that year stands as a reminder of how different the league once was. Number 1. Rangers coach Lester Patrick plays goalie in the Stanley Cup Finals. For decades, NHL teams carried just one goaltender. If they happened to get injured, the game would stop while he went off for repairs, or the team with the injured goalie found someone else to take over. During the 1928 Stanley Cup Finals, Rangers goalie Laurent Chabot took a shot to the left eye midway through Game 2. Coach and general manager Lester Patrick was then forced to find a replacement. Patrick wanted to use Alex Connell, star goalie for the Ottawa Senators, or minor leaguer Hugh McCormack, both who happened to be in the stands that day, but Montreal Maroons coach Eddie Girard refused. The team's 2 biggest stars, Frank Boucher and Bill Cook, persuaded the 44-year-old Patrick, a defenseman in his playing days, to replace Chabot. Luckily for the Rangers, Chabot's skates and equipment were a good fit. At 44 years old, coach Lester Patrick took his place between the pipes, stating, "Boys, don't let an old man down." Patrick saved 18 of 19 shots, leading the Rangers to a 2-1 overtime victory, tying the series 1-1. For the final 3 games, the league gave the Rangers permission to use Joe Miller from the New York Americans, allowing Patrick to resume his duties behind the bench. The Rangers would go on to win their first ever Stanley Cup. At 44 years and 99 days old, Patrick became the oldest man to play in the Stanley Cup Finals, a record which still stands today.